And it's like the jar opens up, the lid comes off, and you say, okay, now I want to know who I am in the world. Did I matter? Me coming into this world, did it even matter? Did I do anything important that meant anything? It's kind of like the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. We don't know what impact we have. And then in that movie, he gets to figure it out. Well, we're looking for that. Now, this is when we start to get that fulfillment because we're saying, oh, I want to give back in some way.
Hey, dear listeners, we need to let you know that Kevin and Stephanie offer investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations to any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Now let's get on with the show. This is Take Back Retirement, the show that's redefining retirement for women. Retirement is an old-fashioned cultural concept. We want to reclaim the word so you can make it your own. I'm Stephanie McCullough, financial planner and founder of Sophia Financial, where our mission is to reduce women's money stress and empower them to make wise, holistic decisions so they can get back to living their best lives. Kevin Gaines is my longtime colleague with deep knowledge in the technical stuff, investments, taxes, and retirement plan rules. He's a little bit geeky and quantitative. I'm a little bit touchy-feely and qualitative. Together, through conversations and interviews, we aim to give you the information and motivation you need to move forward with confidence. We're so glad you're here. Coming to you semi-live from the beautiful West Lakes Office Park in suburban Philadelphia, this is Stephanie McCullough and Kevin Gaines of Sophia Financial and American Financial Management Group. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, Kevin.
Today, we get to talk to Dr. Deborah Heiser. Debbie is an applied developmental psychologist, the CEO and founder of The Mentor Project, and author of a great book called The Mentorship Edge. She's a TEDx speaker, a member of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches, Thinkers 50 Radar List, and an expert contributor to Psychology Today. She's also an adjunct professor, and we'll get to hear a lot about her research around the positive aspects of aging, as well as the role that mentorship can play. Let's dive into our conversation with Dr. Heiser. Debbie Heiser, welcome to Take Back Retirement.
Thanks for having me on here. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited because I just love the focus of your work and your research. Tell us, how did you come to do the work that you do?
So it wasn't a straight, direct route. I first started out studying everything no one wants to have or get, things like depression and Alzheimer's disease and palliative care and frailty. And when I was doing that, I was really excited about all of my work because it was back when aging research wasn't really popular. And so I felt like I was really doing some cutting edge stuff. And I was, but it wasn't until I went to a conference and a dinner party and somebody, I was so excited to tell this group of people all about my work. And I didn't know them, but I thought I was going to come in there like some hotshot coming in like, ooh, here's all my good stuff. And it didn't land. So the person across from me said, what do we have to look forward to as we age? You're studying everything that scares us. And I want to know what I have to look forward to. And I didn't have an answer for him. So I realized I also wanted to know what I had to look forward to. And it wasn't those things that I was studying, which are not what we should expect as we grow older. They're the outliers. They're the things that, can happen, but you shouldn't expect. So when I did that pivot, I started to look at midlife and the theories that are out there. And everything is so positive. The media just wasn't talking about it. Nobody was picking up on it. So I pivoted and started to look at midlife. And we have a stage called Generativity. And it's an emotional developmental milestone. So I had before been looking at all the physical milestones and that we could reach. And we know that we get frailer and slower as we get older, but nobody realizes that we get emotionally happier and more fulfilled as we get older. And that's really what we're looking forward to. When we have children, we don't say, oh, I hope brand new baby will run fast. You say, I hope the baby will be happy when they grow older. And that's actually what we have to look forward to. And I was thrilled with this. And then I said, I got to learn more. And that was the starting point for the work that I do now.
So you're saying there is research that we get happier and more fulfilled, but it's kind of just not the kind of common awareness of aging.
Yes. And so it wasn't at all an awareness when I started out. I was looking at aging in the 90s and early 2000s, especially. And people were literally afraid they were going to get Alzheimer's disease, and people were getting blood tests to see if they had the ApoE gene. It was kind of like when we had HIV and AIDS before that, and prior to that, cancer. There are always these sort of decades where we have something that we're afraid of.
Yeah.
And that was what we were afraid of. And that was tied to age. So people were really afraid of their later years. So there was not a lot happening in the media at that time that was looking at everything that we have to look forward to. People tend to respond more also to things that scare us.
True.
So, people weren't getting so excited about hearing, oh, you're going to be happier, this kind of vague statement, you'll be fulfilled. People were instead saying, well, what if? What if I have this negative thing? So that has been something that I've been on a sort of a quest to say, no, change your focus and look at what you have to look forward to, because then you're going to get more of that than if you're looking for something negative. And when you feel fulfilled or excited or full of passion or feel like you make a mark in the world, you live your life in a whole different way. And that's what's exciting to me, is we have an opportunity now, instead of looking at our life as we get older as a series of challenges and look at it as opportunities, it shifts our entire way of thinking to positivity.
So the obvious question to me is why? I mean, why do we become happier? Is it just the way our brains work, or are there like particular things that happen that put us in a better place?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's how it works. Developmentally, how we learn how to walk and talk, and we're built to do that. And nobody says, I wonder what's going to happen. Are they going to do it or not? We expect that to happen. Doesn't matter if it's 6 months or 16 months. We expect a kid to do this, right? Well, we have an emotional developmental trajectory too, where we should hit milestones. So when we're younger, our focus isn't on getting happier. Our focus is, I need to learn how to trust people. I need to learn how to, like a baby has to trust the people that are around them and grow that circle. Then we have to figure out who we are. And that's the stage that's like teen years all the way up until like 30 for some people. It's one that has movement, like learning how to walk. But when we're doing that, that's the time period where we're like, what job am I going to do? And maybe I'm going to switch my job because I decided I don't like that. Who are my people? And once we get through that, so when we're young, we figure out what we're going to do and who our people are. And part of that process is sloughing off all of those people. Like when we're young and we're going out and seeing a ton of people, not all of them end up being our people. You get a smaller and smaller grouping of people that you hang out with who are more meaningful. So you start to develop a more intimate relationship with people. And then you hit a stage where you say, you know what? I'm ready to give back. I have acquired all of this information. You've been taking things in all of these years, right? So you're not focused on happiness as much as you are, let me figure out who I am and get to where I am and who are my people and where am I? Then you hit midlife and it's like the jar opens up, the lid comes off, and you say, okay, now I want to know who I am in the world. Did I matter? Me coming into this world, did it even matter? Did I do anything important that meant anything? It's kind of like the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. We don't know what impact we have. And then in that movie, he gets to figure it out. Well, we're looking for that. Now, this is when we start to get that fulfillment because we're saying, oh, I want to give back in some way. And this is when people say, I want to be a podcaster. it doesn't mean you run around and you chase people saying, let me do good. It's that you say, I want to put myself out into the world. Maybe I'll become a podcaster. And it's an itch that people have that they want to start to scratch. And it could be a blogger. It could be that a person volunteers, that they get involved with philanthropy, that they mentor. We automatically start to do this. And this makes us feel like we're more meaningful and a part of the world. That's part of the happiness. So when we say happiness, it's not like every day we feel like we open up a present. We're like, yay, again. It isn't like that. It's more like, wow, who and what do I want to impact today? As you guys, as podcasters, you're kind of doing that every time you do a podcast. And that is your digital footprint that you're putting out in the world that shows that you are making impact. So does that translate necessarily to happiness like you open a gift? It might lead to feeling fulfilled, or it might lead to feeling like a sort of completeness or something like that, that is under that happiness umbrella. So we continue that though all the way until our final breath.
So interesting. And is that the meaning of this term generativity?
Yes. Generativity, think of it as generating something from yourself and putting it into the world.
Okay.
So people will think it means you're being generous, but it's not. Or reciprocal. So generous is if I go to an ice cream shop and I order an ice cream cone and the person gives me an extra scoop. As soon as I eat it, it's gone.
Right.
But here you are doing something generative, which is this podcast. You finish it, you upload it, it lives out there. Mm-hmm. It's not gone. You've generated a piece of you that goes out into the world. So now, if people think of reciprocity, they think, well, if I'm scratching your back, you'll scratch mine. That's not generativity. It's a transaction. Generativity has to be that you're saying, I want a piece of me to go into the world intrinsically, that you're putting it out there because you want to, not because somebody's making you or you're beholden to someone.
And so it feels like a creative act, right? You're creating something that didn't exist before. Is that a piece of it?
Yes, it can be. But it can also be, imagine, people will say, oh, I don't know what I get. I don't really see how this translates into feeling good. Imagine, I always ask my students, how many of you would like to go donate your time at a soup kitchen, giving out food and beverages to hungry, thirsty people? And they almost all say, I would like to do that. And I'm like, but you're not getting paid. Why would you want to do that? And they say, I feel so good. I can do this. This is something that I have the capacity to do and the bandwidth, and I'm able to do it. Well, now, if I were to say to that student, just before they get there to the soup kitchen, turn left and go to Starbucks and donate your time there, how many of you would like to do that? No one raises their hand. Same act, you're giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people. But the act is coming from you wanting to make an impact in the world versus you going and putting in time that you would normally get paid for. So that's really, it's an intrinsic feeling that we have within ourselves that makes us want to do this. So all the people that blog, all the people that go out and they podcast, 90% of them are not making money from that. And they don't say, you know what, I didn't get paid, I'm not going to do it. They say, oh my gosh, I'm learning along the way. I'm meeting people. I'm making an impact by getting this information that matters to me out there.
That's really cool. One of the things I feel like I've seen as I and my friends have hit midlife is this kind of, like you said, the kind of questioning, like, wait, kind of either, is this all there is? Or the things I have been doing up to now aren't really filling my cup. Like, what could I do differently? And I think you had mentioned before, like it's a reevaluation of your identity.
Yep. What happens is we identify with one identity that we have usually. So that's oftentimes work. And that's our business card is our identity card. Right. And we forget that we have other aspects of ourselves. It's not like we don't have other identities. We forget about them. It's like when you go into a closet in that back corner that has all these cute things you've forgotten about in it. Well, that's kind of like our identity. So this can happen in retirement is because this often happens in a midlife, or a person will take a midlife pivot and say, I want to do something else. This is a time when somebody's like, I have not been engaging that a part of my identity. And it becomes a feeling like I must do this now. And part of that is because our bandwidth has changed. We have more time. We're good at the things that we do. So what in our 20s or 30s took us all day to achieve, we can do in 2 hours because we're so good at it. That leaves us time to say, what else is out there? And so having that bandwidth gets us to question that. But that's where people will say, I'm going to start a side hustle. I'm going to go engage in things I haven't engaged in before, or I'm going to leave the job that I've been doing and go start something new. And that's really pulling clothes from that back corner of your closet that you've neglected for a long time.
I mean, that's what we see with our clients in this phase of life, which is why we named the podcast Take Back Retirement. Let's kind of redefine this. It's not necessarily hanging it all up and sitting on a porch and knitting for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
They want to do something and engage in the world, but maybe in a different way than they have. Even my friends who took time out of the workforce out of the paid workforce to raise a family or care for other people, right? When that kind of wraps up, then they're having the opportunity to say, okay, what other parts of my identity can come out?
Exactly. And it's because it can, I always tell the students that I teach, you can run faster than me, but I'm happier than you. And part of that is because they're going through that stage. They're getting jobs to make money. That is their first goal. Now, they want to have jobs that they like, but the first real goal is like a survival goal, right?
Yeah.
I have to set myself up so I can eat and have a roof and maybe a car, whatever it is that they need, right? That's the primary goal. And then they're sort of stuck in that for a little while. And that is why the identity they're not thinking of their identity first. It becomes their business or work because they can't think of anything else. It's kind of a survival mode for most of us because we know that if we stop working, we'll have no months or 1 month or 2 months or whatever it is to survive. And that changes in midlife because we've already established a lot of that stuff. And that's why it's a luxury that we have the ability to do this now.
Right. Of course, not everyone does.
That's true. But even if you are not in a stage where you can say, I can shift or pivot my job, a lot of people will say, I'm going to shift or pivot how I think of myself outside of work.
But as you're doing these pivots, can you pivot within what you're currently doing and just look at it differently? Meaning if, you have a job and yes, you get a paycheck, but if you learn or say, hey, I get a lot out of this by giving out my knowledge. The fact that I get a paycheck is a nice bonus, but I'm actually getting something, I don't know if I'm using the word correctly, altruistic from this.
Yes. And that's a great point that you're making because a lot of people will say, I've been at this job for a long time and I want to see a piece of me in it. And so that's when if you are in a company that has a good mentoring program, there are very many bad ones out there, but if you have a good one, and the good one means that people are asked if they want to mentor, it's not part of the checkbox of the workplace. If people are allowed to give back, they then can feel really much more invested in their job and have their identity put in there in a way because they are generating a piece of themselves in others, whether it's laterally in other departments or it's hierarchically. And that makes people happier about their workplace and want to stay there longer. And it makes them identify in that way. That is a refocus. That's like saying, I'm having a new look at my workplace and what I'm doing because I've taken a step back and now I'm seeing it through the eyes of somebody else who I'm mentoring. So you can get that. If you're mentoring, you're not being paid. So that's why I said it's voluntary. So when companies do it right, they say, would anybody like to volunteer to mentor? Sign up here. And then you get a list of people who want to mentor, and then they go and they match them up somehow and see if that works. If you're in one where people say, now you must mentor, that often is an opposite effect. And people feel like they're at Starbucks rather than soup kitchen. So, but that reframing is exactly what we want for mid-level and upper-level people in the workplace, because otherwise their work always feels like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the mountain, as opposed to feeling like I am now changing the trajectory of somebody else's life or viewpoint or whatever. I'm infusing a bit of me into it. The other thing that happens when we don't engage properly with that is that we're burning down libraries. our mid and senior level employees are the ones that hold all of the information about the company. And as we saw senior executives getting cut from their jobs not so long ago, we saw the newer hires who were paid less were floundering because they didn't know how to move forward. It's like starting from scratch.
Yeah. The institutional knowledge is out the window.
The wheel stopped and then they have to reinvent the wheel. And so there are many benefits both to the company, but also to the younger people who might still be there. So we have to be very mindful of the knowledge bank and how this developmental theory works in the workplace for our benefits.
And you've done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah. And it's so exciting to see that people who are working or decide to pivot and do something different can find satisfaction either right where they were 10 minutes before, or that they get to have a new pivot, see themselves through their own eyes differently.
Tell us about your book.
So I wrote The Mentorship Edge because I had been working with so many people who were mentors. And I was so worried about how we throw around the word mentorship. And so people will use it so loosely that I felt like if people were walking their dog, they felt like they were mentoring their dog because it's just used so loosely. And then it kind of got hijacked by corporate America where people were talking about the toxic mentor. And I was like, what? If you're a toxic, you're not a mentor. Like that, you're just, those two don't go together. You should never feel burdened by being a mentor or feel like, oh, I got paired up with some horrible person. Now I'm stuck with them like in an arranged marriage for the rest of my life. All of these things made me feel like we need to get the right definition out there and show how we're built to do this. Because if we miss that opportunity, we miss it in our own personal lives. Mentoring isn't just work. It's all the different ways that we mentor and we don't know about it. If you are somebody who doesn't think that you're making impact, you are probably one of those people who's going to fall into the trajectory of what I studied earlier in my career.
The bad things, the bad outcomes.
Yes. But here's what we really know about mentorship. And that is that, religion has been passed down for centuries. You just one day say, "Ooh, I got a box. Here's religion. Here we go." You subscribe to whatever is in your family or whoever you marry or what's around you. And that is mentorship. Somebody's passing that along. And that goes with the values that we have in our families, where we pass on values. And we say, I loved what I grew up with. I'm going to take what I like and I'm going to pass that down and not pass down the stuff I didn't like. But we're still mentoring. That's why if you look at culture and traditional meals and things like that, when you go to a holiday, you aren't like, what's going to happen today? You open the door and the smells are going to be what you expect. The sights, the views, the people. So like every year for Thanksgiving, I make the entire meal that my grandmother made. It's on little index cards in her handwriting. She's no longer with us. And it's the same meal every year. And we all take this for granted that this is just what we do. One year, my uncle came to visit us for Thanksgiving. And he was so emotional because I make the meal that he grew up with. He had been eating his wife's meal.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So he was like, I haven't had this 40 years. And he was so emotional about it that the next year I sent him the meal, put it in containers. But we forget that the values, the culture that we have in our families is passed down. On my kids, this is their meal, right? So that index card that probably came from her mother that was passed down is going to continue to get passed down. And that's mentorship. We are not going to remember Bob in accounting in 300 years, but we will remember the meals and the holidays and the values and the religion and the culture that have been passed down. So in the book, I really try to make sure that everybody realizes that mentorship is around us. We're engaged in it. And people who say to me all the time, I don't have a degree, I can't be a mentor. There's more power in a grandma's back pocket than there is in anybody else out there, because they're the ones that are often passing down the values of the family.
And I would imagine sometimes the oral history or the stories and traditions. I love that.
Yeah. We all operate, even the bad stuff that we don't like about ourselves often comes from family dynamics and things that get passed down.
Oh, sure.
So, like when I was parenting my kids, I was like, ooh, I see my parents right now.
Like I am being my mother. How did that happen?
Exactly. But if you look at all of that, it feels there is some comfort in knowing that we are doing things based on what we have seen before. And then it isn't like we're starting from scratch all the time. But the book is really there to let people know how they can engage in mentoring in their everyday lives, who is actually around them. Just look to your left and look to your right, and how it looks in a bazillion different ways. So I highlight it with different mentors and how this is a developmental milestone that we can all reach and should expect to.
So it's not just that you have to work in a company that's got a formal program. And I would imagine that even kind of reframing the things we're already doing and realizing that it's mentoring might make it feel more significant.
It does. So when people are able to quantify how much mentoring they've done, they're able to feel that footprint that they're making and the impact that they're making. It's the same as when George Bailey found out that he made impact in his community. He was feeling so down. And then he found out, oh my gosh, people really were affected by me. Now we get that exact same feeling when we feel like we've been able to quantify our mentorship. And I was just talking to somebody the other day who said, I taught somebody how to do something, and they were teaching them, it was a young person teaching another young person about some new aspect of social media. And that person acknowledged that he helped them. And this person was moved by that. They felt really good. And this is a young person in his 20s who's saying this. So we are engaged in this all the time, and we don't have a word for it. We may say, oh, I was nice to somebody. That's not being nice. You're mentoring somebody. And when that person acknowledged it, they got to put that in the bank, their impact bank. So if you're able to thank somebody and say, thank you for mentoring me through that, it puts it in a different category than nice. Nice, we throw away. We're supposed to be nice. Nice is just a part of our character. So if we just say to somebody, you just were nice to me, that they don't get to put in their impact bank. They do get to put it in if it's categorized as mentorship. And if we say to somebody, thank goodness you helped me and you showed me what you did, that was a real mentoring moment. We're helping that person to see every time we do that, we do it more and more and more and more. And our impact bank gets full.
I love that.
So am I taking this too far? But if you view your job as helping people, obvious stuff, doctors, teachers, whatever, is there a tendency to have greater job satisfaction because you actually think you're doing something beyond just a paycheck? Or am I taking this way too far?
No, you're not. And I love that you said that. No, some people get great satisfaction if they're money oriented and they're like, I want to make money and I see money, they're happy. A person who goes out and says, oh, I'm helping people, they might be happy. That's passion, right? But here's what a lot of people do. They say, I am a teacher, therefore I'm also a mentor. No, you're not. Doesn't mean that. So when I'm helping a student and they're like, you are mentoring me. And I'm like, no, this is my job. I'm advising you right now. I'm doing my job. And if I didn't do this, I'd be a bad teacher. But I happen to do my job well right now. You are getting what you need. I'm giving you what you need. It's outside of that environment. And this happens all the time with teachers, that outside of the classroom, you're engaging with students and helping them. That's mentoring.
Okay.
So I give an example in the book of both a college professor who advised his students, and one of them said, I want to do more. Like, you're an author, you do all these things. So he brought on his former advisee to co-author a book with him. So he then mentored her through that and getting her to the next level. She was not his student anymore or in that capacity. In terms of an elementary school teacher, I talk about a woman who was teaching, and she lived in Iowa and was teaching in Iowa. And after school, the kids would come over and play out. She lived and worked very close. That she would see the kids in the community and they would come over and talk to her and see her. And she would mentor them outside of the classroom. And it wasn't until she retired that someone said, "You are the reason I graduated. I'm the first person to graduate high school. I went on to become a nurse. My daughter is now going to be in the opera. And it was because of you and mentoring outside of the classroom because I had a terrible home to go to. And you showed me what it could look like to have a good life." So mentors are everywhere and they can be jobs that are seen as sort of more altruistic jobs. But mentoring and advising or teaching or coaching are different things. If you're coaching, the goal is to get you further along in the job or in the sport or in whatever it is that you're doing. It's goal focused in that way. Mentoring is an emotional connection between two people. It's a meaningful emotional connection. And that's outside of the job. That's where the difference is.
So what would you say to someone who finds themselves stuck in a more negative perspective on growing older, whether just because that's what they've picked up from the culture, or maybe they are facing some specific challenges, or they've seen family members struggle with health stuff? I know people who really don't have a positive outlook on getting older. Would you have any suggestions to help them reframe?
I think a lot of times people need to see someone, right? We have an emotional trajectory that goes in one way. Can we sometimes fall aside? Yes. But if our continuous thought is negative, you should talk to somebody.
You mean like a professional?
Yeah. Go talk to a psychologist, a therapist, someone in your community, because that reframe is necessary. Now, some of us, we can reframe on our own if we just hit a blip. And this happens like when people retire. This happens all the time. Somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, this wasn't what I signed up for," or "I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do next." And this is like where the heartbeat is going a mile a minute. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed with anxiety now.
Yeah.
What is in my future?" Because we have a structure every day with work. We know what we're expecting. Even if we don't like it, we know what we're doing. That goes away with retirement. And if somebody has their identity and their power feeling like it was taken from them, that can be a temporary setback for them that they can just get back on with a reframe, right? And that can happen with somebody engaging in the community. That is somebody who's engaging with people that they say, "This is something I'd like to do." And I'll give you an example of this. It's like in an opposite direction. A teacher said, "I'm overwhelmed with both downsizing and retiring." I went to her house. She said, I'm a teacher. Now I'm not. I'm nothing. And I looked around the room, and because she was talking about downsizing and in the process of this, I said, "My goodness, what are you doing with all those beautiful paintings?" And she said, "Oh, I did all of those." And I was like, "What? They're amazing." I really was like, "These are gorgeous." So I said, "You never mentioned that you're a painter." And she said, "Oh, I'm not. I'm not a painter. I'm a teacher." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, let's talk about that." So we reframed that. When she moved, she opened up a gallery and she was a painter now. Like that's how it turned. Now, another one was an artist who was like, there are other aspects of myself that I'd like to do. I like to go to sports games. Okay, well, what do you do about that? Get cheap tickets? No, he decided to be the bus driver for the sports teams because then he got to the college teams, because then he got to go down on the field and be right there. Now, that's a creative way of having a pivot and a reframe. He never then said, "I'm not an artist," but he got to say, "I'm following a passion of mine that I couldn't have afforded otherwise." So when we look at these things in our lives, I talk about this in the book also, this is something that we really have an opportunity to live the life we want to, but I'm the same way. We all get stuck in our own way sometimes.
Yeah.
And we, like podcasts like this that can open your eyes to something new, engaging outside yourself in some way, getting new, fresh knowledge. It might be through a blog or a community organization or faith-based organization. These are the places that you can go to get a little reframe. If you're just stuck, not like if it's been a pattern of decades of feeling negative.
Right.
You're talking like just like a little kickstart or just refresh.
A refresh is super powerful. We all need a refresh from time to time. It's not like just some people need it. We all do. And it's super powerful.
I have one friend, we used to have what we would call ladder building sessions, because if one of us was stuck in a rut, then we would get together and have coffee or lunch or something, and we could build a ladder to get ourselves out. And it was kind of that like getting out of your own head, having a different perspective, and a reframe for each other. It was a nice thing.
I just went to what was called a clarity weekend. So a friend of mine, her name is Sam Horn. She is somebody who has this real knack for getting people together and doing things. So we had an all women clarity weekend, and everybody came with their whole things. We all just went in and we were like, I was like, I don't even know what I need clarity on, but hey, let's see. This was just a gathering of women to get together for this. And now we're meeting afterwards all the time because we're finding that we're able to jumpstart each other, because when somebody else sees us and what we do, they're able to allow us to see ourselves through different lenses. And so people can do that in their own communities as well. There's real power in that.
I love that. Debbie, thank you so much for being with us. How can people follow you, learn more, find the book?
You can follow me I write for Psychology Today. So just look me up there. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me at deborahheiser.com. And you can find the book anywhere you buy books. And if you are a person who likes to listen and not read, it is available in audiobook.
Excellent. I love an audiobook.
Me too.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I love your show. Thanks for putting this out into the world.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I really found this one interesting, Stephanie, because I wasn't getting confused, but I could hear myself feeding myself my own line of bullshit, frankly, of, hey, I mentor in my job, because of what I'm really doing is helping people sort through their stuff and get to a better place and become happy and everything. And I get paid, but you know what? I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I get the value from doing all that. And I could just hear myself. It's like, my God, I'm not going to be able to walk out of my office door because my head's going to be so inflated. So I'm really glad that we were able to, all that to be said, I'm glad we were able to clarify the difference between mentoring and just doing your damn job.
Right. If it's paid, it's not mentoring. That was a really interesting piece of it, that it is the volunteer part of it, because it's just not the same if it's part of your actual work.
I mean, it's not to say that you can't get that you can't derive some sort of happiness from it, but it's not.
Right.
Mentoring is something different.
But I think Debbie brings, which is different, is her perspective as an applied developmental psychologist, right? Like, we humans, we have an emotional developmental trajectory. And this phase of generativity is an actual thing that most of us are going to hit and go through, wanting to start to give back from that which we have learned and experienced up to now. It's just kind of, I've seen it as a pattern among people I know, but it's an actual thing.
No, I think the first thing she said was probably the most important thing, which is, as you get older, you get happier.
Mm-hmm.
And she's right. We only ever hear about the bad stuff, the downside. And because let's be honest, how many of us watch movies or TV shows or read books in which somebody has a good day? We don't.
That's boring? Is that what you're saying?
It just doesn't get that whole, it doesn't generate, it doesn't, draw the eyeballs.
Yep.
But I think we need to say that more. We need to hear it more, that, you know what, there's a decent chance you're going to be happy, and don't look for the bad stuff. Yes, bad stuff's going to happen. It's going to be what it's going to be, but don't be scared to embrace the upside of this stuff.
Right. And that kind of idea that you get more of what you're looking for. So if you're focused on the positive parts of it, that you'll see more. And I think the corollary to that is, well, if you're not feeling that positive part, maybe it deserves a little kind of looking at where you are and what you're doing and how you're spending your time and what might be missing. Is this part of generativity, of giving back of yourself? Is that maybe missing in your current structure? And as we talked about, you could maybe find that way to do that in your current situation, or maybe it's time to make a change.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Stephanie, you just nailed it. It's changing your mindset of, oh, bad things are happening to me, but that's because I'm getting older. Bad things are supposed to happen to me. Bad things are happening to me. And yes, some of it is just life, but maybe I do need, as we were saying earlier, a refresh.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to look at this a little bit differently. And maybe things are not what I think they are at the moment.
A reframe. And I do appreciate her saying that sometimes it's time to talk to a mental health professional, right? If you kind of find yourself stuck in that negative patterns of thought, we have interviewed therapists and coaches and all kinds of people on this show, right? There are plenty of professionals out there focused on this phase of life who have some expertise who can maybe bring you that perspective. And yeah, maybe you'll get there on your own, but it could jumpstart you and get you there that much quicker.
Absolutely.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this conversation. We certainly did. We'll talk to you next time. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from her.
Be sure to subscribe to the show and please share it with your friends. Show notes and more information available at takebackretirement.com. Huge thanks for the original music by the one and only Raymond Loewy through New Math in New York. See you next time.
Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group, American Financial Management Group, and Sophia Financial are separate entities. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized tax advice. Please consult your tax advisor regarding your specific situation.